All right, welcome. My name is Hui Pham. I'm Preservation Program Director of the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation. We're excited today to feature the virtual launch of the latest addition to our Revisit Washington virtual online map, specifically featuring the Japanese American Remembrance Trail. We're excited to have Cassie Chinn, Deputy Executive Director for the Wing Luke Museum of the Asian American Experience, as well as Ðoan, Diane, Hoàng, who is the Senior Tour Manager. Before we hand it off to them to tell us about how the Wing Luke got involved in our partnership to feature the Japanese American Remembrance Trail, I just wanted to give a brief introduction to the Revisit Washington platform, which is my background today, and you can visit the full website at revisitwa.org, which I'll put in the chat. But the program really began in as early as 2008, when the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation, in partnership with the Washington State Historical Society and WashDOT, decided to put the tours from this 1941 guidebook that features highway tours as part of a Federal Writers Project initiative. And in those tours, we were able to put up those WPA tours on our website, which you can take and visit yourself. It shows you the stops, what's there and not there anymore, as well as the narrative history and explanation behind those stops. But in realizing that those tours written and featured at the time might not have captured all of the communities and rich history of our state during its 1941 publication, in the most recent decade, we've added a few heritage tours that we're really excited to expand upon, including the African American heritage in Washington State, specifically around King County, I believe, the Japanese American heritage tour on Vashon Island, as well as the Latino heritage tour, and then, of course, the fourth edition, the Japanese American Remembrance Trail, which you'll hear about today. And we're also looking forward to continue to expanding and adding different heritage tours to our website, because it is a great platform in which it's ready to use as long as you have pictures and media and written narratives to really show off the places that matter in Washington State. But with that, I'll be excited to hand it off to Cassie Chinn, who will explain how the Wing Luke got involved in our most recent partnership. So Cassie.
Hi, everyone. Just want to give my thanks for spending your late afternoon with us. I'm looking at the participant list and seeing some familiar names too, so really appreciate your time and your interest. My name is Cassie Chinn. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Deputy Executive Director of the Wing Luke Museum. I'm fortunate to have worked in Seattle's Chinatown-International District for almost 30 years. And then also fortunate to have served as the project lead, working hand in hand with community members to develop the Japanese American Remembrance Trail. I'm going to share my screen. The Japanese American Remembrance Trail grew out of long-term relationships and ongoing partnerships that the Wing Luke Museum has with Japantown stakeholders, including the businesses there, to help build up Japantown, which, as we know, was deeply impacted by the forced removal during World War II. We're seeing two images of one of the core buildings on the trail and in Japantown. The Higo 10-cent stores made its home at the Jackson building. I mean, you can see the earlier photo on the left, and then that same building boarded up during World War II. Community has come together time and time again to try and rebuild, to reactivate Japantown. And we've done this with community partners in a number of ways. So some of the images early on, I think we created a book to document the stories called Meet Me at Higo. And then we also did historic displays in the business itself. You can see that in the lower right, and that's some displays in Kobo at Higo. Then we came together with community members to develop a pocket garden, Chio's Garden, and that's in the upper left corner, which then grew to expand to the reclaiming of Nihonmachi Alley, which both places are now a community gathering place for us. With these relationships in mind, the opportunity arose to work with the National Park Service with the River Trails and Conservation Assistance Program to create an urban trail, which would ultimately become the Japanese American Remembrance Trail. We joined together in an intensive community-led planning process to determine the main messages and the themes for the trail. That led us then to identify potential sites, both visible and vanished sites. The National Park Service then helped determine the potential routes to connect all of those sites. And then we got to go and test the routes, put feet to the streets to be able to see what worked, how did we want to refine them. And so we did all of this work, and it resulted at first with just a basic creation and launch of the trail. We did that first with a print map and with tours. And then we dove into the next phase, which we community members identified as priorities, to create some type of digital tour, some type of online presence, to also do curriculum and teacher training, and then to continue doing the tours. And our community members investigated a lot of platforms, and they landed at wanting to pursue bringing the Japanese American Remembrance Trail online through RevisitWA. They especially liked the way that it was easy to use and navigate. It had a simple way to have a good quality engagement through photos and video, and easy to read, kind of accessible text. And then they were especially won over, as we indicated, by the ability to connect with other local stories and other local sites, and to really want to foster that sense of cross-exchange. So if you were interested in the Japanese American Remembrance Trail, that would be great. And then maybe you would go and explore more of Seattle's Black heritage through the sites as well, and wanting to really see that cross-pollination. So we're excited to be able to launch the RevisitWA site with you today. Upcoming, you can look forward to a new print map for the Japanese American Remembrance Trail. We're also doing new art installations at one of the core sites on the trail at the Immigration and Naturalization Service building, which served as a place of detention during World War II for Japanese American first-generation Issei leaders. And then also ultimately, we'll be expanding even the types of trails we are sharing on RevisitWA, which will include another community-led project, our Redlining Heritage Trail. We're super grateful today, as we mentioned, to have our senior tour manager, Diane Wang Di, who you can see her in the photo actually leading a tour. She's given many tours of the Japanese American Remembrance Trail for private groups. We also have public seasonal tours through January and March, and she's done this both for in-person and live virtual tours. So what a treat to have Dawn here with us. And then just one other look ahead. I couldn't resist encouraging folks. There are many opportunities to explore Seattle's Chinatown-International District and our Japantown. Right now, we're offering tours of the INS building itself. So on the left, you can see Dawn leading another tour of the building. There's a link to where you can register for tours for that. Japantown itself will be celebrating Japantown Jingle from December 10th to the 24th. A holiday shopping, an opportunity to support the businesses there, get some good eats, and find some good things for gifts and giving. And then our year-round work with Japantown circles all the way through the summer. in August, we have our annual block party with them, Hi Japantown. So there's a lot of good opportunities to learn about and to experience Japantown. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing screen and then turn it over to Ðoan for the next part of our program.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ðoan. I'm the senior tour manager here at the Wing Luke Museum. I've been working here for maybe about 10 years at least. And it's just fun to see my pictures while I'm leading the tour. But here I am. But so let me see. I'm going to share my screen too. I want to share with you all the digital map here and talk a little bit more about the different spaces that we have and kind of give you a little overview of the digital map in itself and just how powerful of a tool this can be used, as a learning resource. And there's just so much information at your fingertips that is just amazing that, we were able to, organize it all in this way. And, it's great to have these opportunities to memorialize these historical spaces that make our community what it is. It's such an important thing to be able to preserve these historic spaces and the stories that they carry too, and still be able to actually walk through them to this day and immerse yourself in these particular spaces. So just looking at the website here, you can see that you can expand and collapse the map as you will. And throughout the top portion of the page here, there's different checkpoints along the way that make up the part of the Japanese American Remembrance Trail tour. And you can, if I zoom out, you can see that the stories that we have preserved are very vast in our community. Japantown was about 72 blocks altogether before everything would change during World War II and the incarceration of Japanese Americans and their parents. And when you look at the map, you can see that it stretches all the way to the west, with the furthest point being at the Cadillac Hotel. That's all the way in Pioneer Square. And then when we pan it, as we follow Jackson Street, being the big trail point that kind of ties it all together, the most eastern point that we have is the St. Peter's Episcopal Church. And so it's really amazing to see the expanse of the Japanese American community, the presence that they held here. With 72 blocks shrinking down to about, 6.5 blocks in this, core around here, it really goes to show the impact of what had happened with the incarceration of the Japanese Americans and their parents. And for us to be able to, preserve this stuff, I think is really important, especially moving forward as, we see more gentrification happening in the neighborhood, and who knows what else will happen. But so I kind of want to just point out some cool spots along the way here. And, if you have any questions, as we said, definitely go ahead and put that in the chat. But so you can go ahead and actually click on the different links. And then at the bottom here, more information will show up about the different locations. And as you click in a little bit deeper, there's more information to be shared about the different spaces. But the Wing Luke Museum is going to be the core starting point with our tours. And I hope that, with this this presentation today, it encourages you all to come on down and check out these spaces. And once again, immerse yourself in these places, because it's one thing to see it on a screen and being able to read it in a textbook, but to actually be in those spaces, walk into the places where these people once were, take the same steps that they had walked, right, at a different point in time, it's very powerful. and to recognize the history. And some of these things you're not going to be able to find anywhere else. So, if you come on down and take the Japanese American Remembrance Trail tour that we offer at the museum in the springtime, here are some things that you'll be able to see. But like the beginning point, can I make that bigger? Oh, well, here's a nice close-up of it. But this is the Nippon Con Scrim. This hangs up in our Tateuchi Story Theater today, where we begin our tours. And this piece has a history within the Japanese American community, in that it used to hang at the Nippon Con Theater, and I can click on it here. So it's kind of like Wikipedia, where you've got more where you've got easy links to connect you to the different spaces along the way. But the Nippon Con Hall was a community cultural hub for many folks to gather. You can see folks standing in front of it here, and the picture that I showed you from the theater portion that hangs in our museum, it still looks very similar. It was an advertising wall back in the day. It was a place where you could see kabuki performances, plays, shows, all sorts of celebrations that would take place in that space. Here's some more photographs too that you can see down below. But it was a community cultural hub where folks would gather. It was very important for, the upcoming second generation Japanese Americans, the Nisei, the American-born kids who were growing up, right, in the United States with a completely kind of different social setting than their parents would, right? So at this theater, this is where children could learn more about the culture that their parents brought with them, and stay tied to their cultural heritage. So, like, I love the Scrim because it just holds so many connections and networking to the different spaces that you'll walk through along the map. And where is my map? Here it is. Oh, sorry. Show map. Other spaces. Let's see. On that advertising wall that I showed you, you have about 41, 42 boxes that are painted on that advertising wall. And besides, out of those boxes that I'm talking about, there are 2 businesses that are left still in our neighborhood today. And it's so cool that you can actually frequent these places to still continue supporting, right, old Japantown. And even with the new business today, as Cassie was talking about. So with the Japantown jingle, that's happening later on in December 10th to the 24th. But Maneki, that is the first restaurant, first Japanese restaurant that would be open up in Washington State. And it's a business that's still running strong today. So I love this picture here. You've got the original owner, Tokuji Sato, in front of the restaurant. And when you take a look at this picture, right, it doesn't even feel like you're in Seattle kind of thing. It's a, destination station back in the day where folks would go, and it was like you're whisked to somewhere else. And considering, what had happened during World War II, Japantown completely turning into a ghost town, having the all of the different businesses boarded up. It's interesting to think about how what we saw during the beginnings of the pandemic in 2020, the same kind of thing happened again, where, our neighborhood was completely shuttered down. And a lot of the, responses of what was happening was also in line with what we had seen in the past, where we saw anti-Japanese sentiment, with the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. There was a lot of xenophobia that was geared towards geared towards those of Asian ancestry as well. That book that Cassie had mentioned, Meet Me at Higo, that talks more about the stories that were here in the neighborhood, and the INS building too. Where is my, oops, for the INS building, sorry, where did it go? The INS building, that was also a really cool space that I would want to highlight with you all as well. There it is, number 27. We also offer tours of this building, and as Cassie mentioned, we're working on a new art piece to also highlight at the space. I also want to share with you all that later on in the month of December, the 3rd and 4th, there's actually going to be the Winter Open Studios and holiday market that's happening at the space. So while we at the museum are going to be leading tours of the building that day, the rest of the building is also going to be open for a lot of activities. But I just wanted to highlight some of these photographs for you so you can see what the space used to be. But the Immigration and Naturalization Services building was built in the 1930s to basically uphold the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, to process immigrants, detain them, and essentially deport them from that space. Over time, it's become a space that has been a space to detain a multitude of different ethnic communities. And, you know, during World War II, the United States was at war with Italy, Germany, and Japan. And that's when we would see the, you know, Chinese Exclusion Act actually lift. And instead of holding Chinese immigrants there, that's when we would have the male Japanese American men be taken from their families first and actually held and detained in the space here. So if you ever come across that Meet Me at Higo book that we were able to create with the museum, the Murakami family, this is a special family that I didn't get to talk about yet, but I'm going to talk about it next. Murakami family is one of the few families that actually was able to return and restart their business here in the neighborhood. So the father was held and detained there. He would write letters back to his family to let them know that he was safe, to reassure them that he was okay, even though he might have not been while being detained at the space. Where is it? Kobu at Higo. Along the way, you might have seen that cute frog. There's me again. Oh, not that one, sorry. This is the Kobo at Higo. So the father there that you see my mouse hovering over in front of the shop, the Higo 10-cent store, that was the 5 and dime that the Murakami family had, that they, you know, were like almost like a convenience store that sold all sorts of different kinds of things that you could use. The space that Cassie had highlighted, where in their shop today we had an exhibit in that space. But there's the family, the Murakami family. It's just so amazing to think about how there's so many connections, as I said, that lead back to all of these different places in the neighborhood. And it just really goes to show how powerful this tour can be. And I just want to show just a few more pictures, if you all don't mind. And oops. We'll probably save some space for questions just because there's so much to see here. But it would be great to also hear from you as well. But so further west, right, of the Japanese American community, that's where you had spaces like the Cadillac Hotel and the Waterfall Garden. And for the Japanese American community, the Waterfall Garden is all the way on the west side right here. As I said, it was more towards Pioneer Square. So over on the western side, this is where you actually had more of the business core for the Japanese American community. This is where you have more of the hotel spaces that some of the Japanese American families would own, the shops and the businesses. This little spot right here, as you go underneath the freeway, it's so interesting to think about because you have the Cherryland florist business. And if you were to go and visit this space today, that's where the I-5 overpass cuts through. But so different kinds of things, such as building more efficient transportation, right, has definitely chipped away at our neighborhood and erased a lot of these powerful, community spaces that are here in our neighborhood. And then one last thing, I'll show you more towards the western side. You have more of the residential area. This is where more folks would be living. A lot of Buddhist churches, more kind of community spaces. Oops. And then you also have Collins Playfield up here, which is really cool to highlight because this is the space where Collins Playfield is in this particular area here. But just in line with our redlining heritage trail tours and at the INS building where we see different communities intersect with one another, there's a lot of these places, on these maps. And it really wasn't as though these were, it wasn't always out of the best intentions that these places came about. So if you're familiar with Seattle's history and its redlining legacy of restrictive racial covenants, there's a reason why we have all these ethnic communities segregated all into one space. But this is where we can find them coming together and actually having joy and coming together in this way. So I think that was a lot. Can I pass it over to you and maybe we can open it up to questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have plenty of time left for open questions, and you're definitely invited to keep your share screen on, because I'm sure some of the questions might refer back to one of the points. So if you're in the chat, feel free to drop any inquiries about what the Japanese American Remembrance Trail means, or some curiosities that you have about it, or just how the digitization and the storytelling process plays a role in capturing that history in a different way than the traditional brick and mortar preservation, where we understand that stories are embedded into our built environment. So just while we wait for some questions to come in the chat, I definitely invite Cassie and yourself to come up with some questions and answers of your own. I'll start by saying that it's really intriguing to see, that missing florist building. So if you could, just share your screen again and tell us more about some of those buildings or sites that have been lost. I'm really curious to see what the delta is on the. And I believe you're muted, so okay.
Yeah, sorry. Let me see here. Some of the at some of the locations on the website, you're going to see some really wonderful artwork that are also showing in the rotating screens. And I just want to highlight that to let you all know that these are all artworks that students have created as a part of our Youth Can program here at the Wing Luke Museum. So it's an art program, after school art program to get, kids learning more about the museum, seeing themselves here in this space, learning about the history and context of our neighborhood, and then being able to showcase their artwork as well. So with the initial Japanese American Remembrance Trail project, we had like a whole bunch of students with the Youth Can program actually create different spaces to different art pieces to memorialize these special spaces as well. But the Cherryland Florist, you can see the building here lined with some, cars back in the day, but this was your local floral shop where the community would always go to for all sorts of different kinds of whether it be celebrations or funerals. It was opened up in 1932, and it was also a small grocery store. So, just seeing that and thinking about the memories that a lot of families were able to create in this time. Definitely with the building of I-5 cutting through the neighborhood, a significant portion of Japantown would, disappear from that. Cassie, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you covered that well. I wonder, Ðoan, if you want to go to number 28, which is the Puget Sound Hotel. That's another vanished site that we're featuring on the trail. It's along Dearborn Street, so you can imagine a big corridor. But along Dearborn Street, it's kind of where close by where the current Wajimaya grocery store is, if you're familiar with that. There used to be this tremendously large, huge hotel, the Puget Sound Hotel, which the Nishimura family operated and owned. And so some of these, especially I think on that part of the southern edge of the Chinatown-International District, still having the Japanese American presence throughout the district. This was before the war. And then we're telling the story of Frank Nishimura, who then grew up in the area, entered and served into the military service. And then there's a video that is there that tells more about his family story and an animated graphic novel that we worked on as well. So another one of those incredibly large and significant places that reflect the Japanese American community that, has since vanished since that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have a question from Stephanie Toothman, who has been unmuted. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Hi. Well, first of all, just to let you know that the chat is disabled.
Oh,
at least
really?
when I try to do it. Second of all, approximately how many buildings were lost with the I-5 extension? And secondly, with the current proposal to extend it, is it Sound Transit Corridor, or how many? I remember there's a number for how many might be lost, but how many from your tour?
Hi, Stephanie. Ooh, that's some meaty questions, which I really appreciated. I'll kind of generally answer and then see if Ðoan has more details. I don't have the specific number of buildings that were lost with the I-5 construction, but I'm teasing towards a show that we're actually opening in April, which is actually centered exactly on I-5 construction and its impact on the Chinatown-International District. There were some very significant portions. You get that sense of the neighborhood as community gathering place, especially when it came to culture and recreation, that we lost with the I-5 construction. So you saw Cherryland Florist, very large building with like flowers and beauty. And now when you walk there and you have the hardscape, the pollution of I-5 that is there. There also was a sports store, like who can imagine in the Chinatown ID that there was a sports goods store? There was the China Art Club that was there as well. And then the Jackson Street Community Council had their office, and that was a hub where inter-ethnic, interracial communities came together around the geographic area to be like a community service place. We also lost a huge amount of manufacturing that was in the Chinatown ID. If some people remember, more recently, there used to be the Acme Poultry Company in what is now Little Saigon. And that's reflective of that manufacturing history that was still in our area. And then there were a fair number of single family homes that we lost as well in that area with the I-5 construction. Now we're facing, the Chinatown ID has a history of carrying a lot of the brunt of a lot of public infrastructure projects. We sit at what is one of the largest regional transportation hubs to date. And now there's the proposal to expand the Sound Transit, our regional link light rail, to create a new station at the Chinatown ID station. That station would be where 3 lines come together, right? So you can imagine a major intersection where it would then link to, there's a railway systems, sounder light link rail, like there's a whole bunch of happenings there. And the community is working really hard to have more self-determination and where that station might be, what it might look like, and what its impacts could be within the neighborhood. They're still working. We're still working to figure out where that might be. The original proposal, which was kind of the most elevated, was to have the new station right at the base of where the historic Chinatown gate is now. And that's on 5th Avenue on King Street. And that's the core of Chinatown. And it would have resulted in both kind of it was an L-shaped carve out of actual physical buildings. But community, in addition, were really concerned about the long-term impacts for construction right at the core of our neighborhood, and then the long-term impacts for displacement with gentrification that comes with the creation of a new station. So we're in the heavy process of figuring out alternatives. There's an alternative that's located on 4th Avenue, so a little bit more away from the core. Could the station be completely not located in the Chinatown ID, maybe in Pioneer Square to the north, or further towards Stadium Station to the south? Maybe too much information.
No, that was great, Cassie. I know that the Wing Luke and the Washington Trust have been in coordination about raising those concerns as part of our mission to save the places that matter in our state. So that's a definitely valid concern, as it could potentially lead to the announcement of the most endangered places listing. Because there's different ways to care about and preserve a building and the community that uses it, right? And that brings me to the next question about what you guys brought up earlier about how the trail and the district are defined by some of these built environment factors like transit or large scale development or demolition and replace. So I was just wondering if you guys could speak on how these things either define or diminish those boundary lines. Obviously, a softball answer is that the I-5 carved the bisection leading to the quarantining of Little Saigon, or what we know of it today. But in the Japanese American Remembrance Trail map, it's not just limited to what we know of Japantown. So can you speak on how, those communities and those ethnic groups bleed into each other's boundaries or our understanding of those boundaries?
Yeah, what I can say to that is it's kind of like a funny personal story, but like I am Vietnamese American, second generation, and going to Little Saigon, that was like the place where my family would come into the neighborhood. And actually, I didn't even know that we had a Japantown until when I was older and working at the Wing Luke Museum, learning more about Seattle's history. And like it didn't occur to me that Japantown had this huge legacy in the neighborhood. And I just remember walking down, or walking up Jackson Street to go up to, let's say, RevisitWA, the big cornerstone of Vietnamese American community and grocery shopping area. And then this was like around like springtime. So you actually have cherry blossom trees that are lining up and down Jackson Street. And I'm just like, oh, that's so nice how the Vietnamese American community has this here to, highlight this history that the Japanese were once here. But then when I thought about it a little bit more, this was because this was Japantown. This was their part of the neighborhood. And, when the businesses were being forced to shut down, that's when you would have opportunities for other groups to be able to move in. And, later on, it would be, with the oncoming of the refugees following the Vietnam War in the late 1970s, early 1980s is when we're seeing more folks from Southeast Asia come. You have these places that are property that's owned by the Chinese American community too. And it's really interesting to see how there's this connection of this newly arriving refugee group, and this welcome for folks here in the neighborhood to kind of help them kind of get started and establish their businesses and stuff like that. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but I just kind of wanted to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Because we understand that it's not linear, right? It's even if we have a National Register or City of Seattle nomination of what the International District is, it's whittled away or added to on our daily interactions with our community, whether they grow or get displaced, right? So I think that definitely speaks to that. Cassie, do you have anything to add towards that?
It's been interesting to reflect, say through this this latest kind of sound transit engagement, to reflect on really the importance of the preservation elements, the documentation elements, to better understand the vanished sites and why that happened, to really dive into kind of the layers of history that happens, because there's so many forces at work that want us to forget, that don't want us to understand that history, because it just paves the way kind of easier, say for, more newer real estate development, paves the way for those displacement pressures. I think things like the Japanese American Remembrance Trail helps us to hold space, to think about space differently. And the more that we can do the ongoing work of identifying the heritage and the places and the sites, just helps us make better informed decisions too for how we want to grow and what that looks like. I just noticed Ðoan dropped off. Kudos to Ðoan, who is at the Wing Luke Museum, whose internet had gone out. So I know she'd been using her own phone hotspot to do the presentation. And I'm guessing that's why she had to drop off.
Oh, wow, yeah. I thought she just turned off her camera. But well, I'll throw a softball question for you, Cassie, as we round out for the evening. And if there's any more last minute questions in the chat, I did open it now, so sorry for the delay on that. We welcome those questions. But just Cassie, as we round out for the evening, I think that the partnership with the Wing Luke and the Washington Trust makes so much sense on this project. We have different different ways of preserving place in history, right? And for us, it's utilizing these digital tools to reach a statewide audience, which is why we're having this virtual presentation today to inspire people to come and take that physical or actual walking tour, right? But I'm really enthusiastic to have the Wing Luke here because it shows that you guys have the understanding to turn the museum space inside out, right? It's like the Wing Luke Museum of the Asian American experience, and it's not necessarily locked behind your brick walls in your actual museum space, right? So can you speak on both the getting outside of the museum building, getting into the Chinatown-International District, why it's important to settle there and to be a part of the community, and then adding on to that, just speaking on the digitization effort of expanding the reach even further.
Yeah. We like to use a phrase which was coined by our previous executive director, Beth Takakawa, who said, the Chinatown International District is the museum's largest exhibit. One that comes out of the neighborhood is amazing, right? Why not? It's so amazing to go and explore and to be able to do that. We also found that that's how our visitors planned a trip to the museum. They planned a trip to the Chinatown International District, which is a regional destination, and they included a visit to the Wing Luke Museum in addition to like going to go eat at one of our many restaurants, going to do some shopping in the area too. And then we realized, right, it's a synergistic relationship then, like as the neighborhood rose, then the museum would rise. As the neighborhood struggled, the museum would also struggle as well. So that's why we've taken this approach in really good ways to partner with businesses, to bring people out into the neighborhood, to lift up all of the amazing cultural heritage that we have. We're excited all the more then to shine a light on these resources through digital tools. And so even if you're not able to come visit, still learn about the history, still connect with it through the online tours. The Wing Luke Museum also pairs this with our curriculum web portal. So if you want to bring this into your classrooms, you'd be able to take that virtual field trip through all of the rich resources, pair it with the curriculum and lessons. And, it's still of such importance, I think, even if you're not able to visit in person, that we learn the history, we understand the legacy, and then the responsibility. What does that mean for our lives today? And our community was really passionate about that too. They wanted to be able to reach people across the mountains and then even broader because of the importance of the lessons of the history that is held here.
Yeah, so that was a great answer. I'm glad you able to alley-oop to that. And then I'm glad Ðoan is back. Thanks for joining us again. I heard about your internet dropping and having to use your own hotspot. But that's the challenges of these digital mediums, right? Where it expands reach, but also it invites new challenges. Because the Revisit Washington map is available as a website, a mobile version of the website, as well as a downloadable app in the iPhone and Google Store. But now that we have Ðoan back, and I see no more questions in the chat, I'll round it off with one more and hand it back to you guys to invite people to come visit the Wing Luke Museum, as well as take the physical walking tours of the Japanese American Remembrance Trail, as well as other tours that you guys offer. So let me hand it back to Ðoan as the senior tour manager on your last minute appeals to the group here.
Hi, yeah, I'm really glad that I was able to jump back in, and I totally apologize for that. Yeah. We just have so much to offer here at the Wing Luke Museum. It's so powerful to be able to actually have different spaces off site, like off campus from our particular, museum location. I was saying earlier about like the INS building as a really cool space, being able to have access into that particular building and to continue sharing the stories of that spaces. Inscape Arts is what it's called today. And, it's bringing new life into the space, just like how we're doing it here in our own building. So where was I going with that? There's just a lot of things that are happening. And I just want to invite you all to come down to the neighborhood. It's like a whole field trip that you can do. It's, a space that you just have to continually come back to. There's places to eat. You can do your shopping, but you can also do your learning and be a part of this history that's also a part of your shared history as well. Because, what I always say on my tours to my guests is like, when we're talking about American history as a whole, just because we're focusing on one particular ethnic group, or the museum is Asian Pacific Islander, Asian Pacific Islander and Native Hawaiian, just because these are like more specific chapters in these kinds of histories, all of it connects back to the history of the country that we share all together. And, to be able to understand it is to know all of it, right? So something that I do also want to share with you all, we recently opened up an exhibit called Resistors, looking at how the Japanese American incarceration really, provided a movement to allow folks who experience the incarceration to speak up. And, as we, move further from that timeline, how we continually see these points in time events happening to us where we see a lot of the awful kind of shadows of that xenophobia repeat itself in a different form. And thank you. A legacy of movement from the Japanese American incarceration. My team is actually offering guided tours of the exhibit December 15th through the 17th, 15, 16, and 17. Gallery guided tours at 11:30 and 2:30. And I just want to drop in the link here if you're interested in taking that. But, not a good link. But I'll happily look at that later. But it's a powerful exhibition that explores personal accounts and experiences, looking at how we can analyze through art, and how we can heal from these different experiences. And just like I said, too, across inter-ethnic lines, how this history all affects us, I think is just really powerful. Yes, I think that is what I wanted to say. I talked about the Inscape Arts and we mentioned Japantown Jingle. So, if there's no more questions, that's my last appeal.
Excellent. And then Cassie, anything else from the Wing Loop?
Just many thanks. Thanks for the partnership with the Washington Trust. We're looking forward to that look ahead to keep expanding the stories that we're able to tell together, and then the work that we're able to do to really make a difference within our neighborhoods and communities. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Cassie. Thanks, Ðoan. And thanks for all of you for joining tonight. We'll send a video recording link if you want to revisit what we learned today. But otherwise, definitely come visit the Wing Luke and their tours and check out the app on your phones. And we'll see you here in Seattle soon. All right. Good night, everyone.